Okay, continuing with sesamoid bones. These are relatively small bones. Some are somewhat flattened. The exception is the patella, which is a fairly large sesamoid bone, and they're found in the knee joint, but also in the hands and the feet, and they basically function to help improve the lever ability of these joints, to make them more efficient in a way. The only sesamoid bone you need to know is the patella. Figure 511 gives you just a little example of a long bone like the humerus upper arm bone. Again, a flat bone like the parietal bone in the skull. Our sutural bones in the posterior part of the skull, in the sutures, the joints between these flat bones. Typical irregular bone, vertebra, within the backbone or vertebral column. Short bones in the wrist, carpals, there's 8 of them. Or short bones in the tarsals, the ankle bones, and they're short bones because they're not long or flat or such. They're kind of cube shaped, like an ice cube shape in a way. So bone markings, we'll finish up with this. These are structures, features that bones have that indicate where blood vessels and or nerves pass over or through a bone, where tendons and or ligaments attach on bones, or where bones articulate, interact with each other, like those sutures in the skull bones. So in your figure 512, spend some time learning what a process is or what a process looks like. It's a protrusion on a bone, but then so is a ramus, except the ramus tends to be a larger protrusion, like on the ramus of the mandible or the jawbone, where it moves up and articulates with the skull. A trochanter is a large protrusion for muscle attachment, ligaments, and or tendons. A tuberosity tends to be smaller than a trochanter. A tubercle tends to be smaller than a tuberosity. So these terms apply to the protrusions or markings on a bone, and how big they are and such kind of depends on which bone they are on. So this figure 512 gives you a good example of some of these bone markings on specific bones, and we will revisit and learn some of these on specific bones when we do the axial and appendicular skeleton. A crest, think of your hip bones, the part that you can feel on the side of your hips. Those are the crests, the iliac crests on your 2 hip bones. Spine, best example is like the spine that you can feel on your scapula or shoulder blade. A fossa is a depression. A sulcus is also a depression. A fossa tends to be larger than a sulcus. The head is usually a site for articulation, like the head on the femur. The neck is often a depression just beyond the head. A condyle excuse me, is an articulating surface, like these 2 condyles on the distal end of the femur. They articulate with the condyles on the tibia, your shin bone. Trochlea is an articulating surface, and we'll see that on the humerus. It has a trochlea. We'll see how it articulates with another bone. A facet is a flattened depression-like articulating surface. A foramen is a passageway through a bone, like a canal. A fissure is like a slit-like passageway through a bone, like these fissures in the orbits of the skull. A meatus or canal is very similar to a foramen. It's a passageway through a bone, usually larger than the foramen. And then a sinus or an antrum is a space within a bone. Like on the skull bone here, the frontal bone, there's a sinus there. Cavity is space. So spend some time on your figure 512 learning these bone markings. It'll become very helpful when we move on to the actual bones in the next couple of chapters. All right, and that is it for chapter 5. Chapter 5, yes.